In theatrical jazz, the blue note is the presence of Black references or experiences that are just enough off-center to make one's head cocked to the side, curious, fascinated. To varying degrees, Carlos Jones and Bridgeforth bend traditional Black reference. Gospel harmonies, civil rights video footage, Motown melodies, Jet magazine, to create something new. Something new that situates them at a powerful crossroads of traditional Black aesthetics, the Western avant-garde, and any other traditions that serve the particular experience they are sharing. Carlos's physical repertoire is shaped by modern dance and the force of breath. Jones's dramatic structure sometimes pays homage to Western operatic forms, and Bridgeforth's ancestral memory draws almost equally from Native Americans as from Africans. Theirs is a Blackness that is expansive and inclusive, one that renders joy, hope, and freedom rather than exposes, invents a series of pathologies in need of repair. They resist the politics of respectability that can prevent Black artists from telling the truth for fear of middle-class reprisals. They resist anything that gets in the way of an artistic and political freedom. Such resistance allows for a full range of Blackness in their work in which race, gender, class, sexuality, and nationality are varied, fluid, and dynamic. They are well-versed in Black literary and performance tropes and critique or recuperate them by blending and bending them into new ideas of Blackness, revealing the particular constructions of U.S. racialized identities and the inextricability of aesthetics and politics, so that their very art-making is the decidedly political act of imagining Blackness anew. Is everything. Jazz, like queer, can be redeployed as a strategy of resistance. Jazz no longer need be tainted by dubious origins, no longer attached to artists outside of its own making, no longer reputed to be dying, but instead vibrantly alive in theater and beyond. Theatrical jazz claims jazz as its name. In this way, jazz, like queer, gets to name itself, is allowed to explode in order to find itself as historically rooted, resistive, and insurgent. If Black embraces joy and jazz, it snatches itself back. It becomes an affront to forces that seek to destroy self-naming. In challenging normative notions of Blackness, Black undermines the state's tactics that control through naming. Theatrical jazz turns Blackness on its head through the joyous blue note of surprise and mystery. Roderick Ferguson's Queer of Color critique reminds us that queers, by self-definitions and practices, subvert the political narratives of progress that are linked to the interwoven experiences of naming, heteronormativity, and social status. What if joy is Black? This becomes a fundamental transgression because Black then lives outside of hegemonic ideas of joy, in which Black is a tool or an object to create joy. When Black becomes agent, Black has nothing to do with utilitarian understandings of what joy might be, where Black and joy only come together as commodities serving others. The multiplicities of Blackness disrupt the ability to name and therefore control who and what Black is. In theatrical jazz, the belief in and pursuit of love and joy become the ultimate Black blue notes, the unexpected drive that keeps Blackness outside of well-worn mainstream definitions and expectations. As such, the drive toward joy is an act of resistance. Everything is everything. Did I hear everything is everything? Everything is everything. Thank you very much. We have some people who are going to challenge Afro-pessimism with joy. Some theories that are roaming around the world these days, and I am offering joy as an antidote to those theories. As such, the drive toward joy is an act of resistance. a declaration of blackness that eludes the stranglehold of socially established defining hands. As our time together comes to a close, as you imagine when the book is complete and the pages begin to dwindle as people read, I'm keenly aware of the aliveness of theater, jazz, and Yoruba-based spiritual practices, and the corporeal nature of queer and black. These concepts don't end, but our time together in the book inevitably will. You will return to your homes this evening. Readers will stop reading, close the cover, and put the book down. A book doesn't do what jazz and theater and Yoruba do. Revise, repeat, sample, come back next week and do it again with a signal difference. The book, my offering, gives the appearance of being definitive, while Daniel Alexander Jones has created 9 iterations of the Book of Daniel. Lori Carlos has returned many times to reimagine her The Cooking Show. And Sharon Bridgeforth's Love Conjure Blues has lived as ensemble work, film, solo performance, and conducted audience orchestra, often with many of you in attendance for the quintessential Bridgeforth experience. Theatrical jazz is a living practice. So, for the text to truly live as a jazz document, you are invited to come back again to it, again and again to it. In this way, you can hear the bridge or the ashe, the ability to make things happen. You can seize the break or the awo, the mystery. And in community, as egbe, pitch the moment higher together. What a journey this has been. The river winds, and I learn the ways of fish. Bringing down the spirit, that is the work. Nothing short of spiritual invigoration. At Northwestern University, waiting to give my offering, a solo performance of Love Conjure Blues, I sat backstage, side stage, really a short wing curtain separating me from the stage and the audience, my eager and courageous collaborators, the audience. Their swelling voices soothe me as I sit with my head bowed, finding concentration. Their anticipation is also mine. I was in all white, feeling cool and ready, a surprise to myself. I am here, allowing the spirit to be. My egbe is with me. Lori is saying, I can't help you with that. And my knowing that she already has. Daniel's fierce improvisations do their jig in my heart, and I remember his patience as I struggled to learn lines several years ago. Sharon's words resting in my lap, the hours of shared rehearsals and casts and scripts and promises. In this performance, my skin is alive. I hear all the words for the first time and am moved, so startlingly moved. The bounty is here and must be shared. Loving gardeners share their fruits. I never left you. I've been right here. Lift now, fly now, free now, be now. It's okay, not alone, not alone, not alone, not alone. Always we praise memory. Our girl don't yet understand that the pressure of not feeling explodes, poisons the spirit, which liable to make the lesser way seem right at the crossroads. I am the conjure, come back to love. And then I know I'm not an actor. I'm a priest, a conjurer, helping the people to their own prayer. This is a holy place, this theater. It is where we can dream and build our worlds together. This is sacred business. No purely commercial ventures here. It is me in the river once each month in my own rituals with Omi. It is Daniel saying goodbye so he could say hello. It is Sharon stepping out of herself to be herself. It is Lori finding her way down the hallway through the darkness. A display of talent is not what is required. It is my virtuosic commitment that must be summoned. It is knowing that everyone here is willing, that my tears will cleanse us all, that the spirit I sought was right here all along, in the place that I feared for its power, for its potential to expose my failures and my hunger. It was here waiting for me to arrive, for me to step one toe in at a time, to let my lip curl in that ugly way, for me to spin with my arms spread, to splash through the words saying thank you to Mama and Daddy at each world. So this is it. My leg bomb moment, the marrow in the bone. And I laughed from my knees. It was here all along, strumming its fingers on the guitar, patient, splashing water on those around me in baptism, the swish of the igungun panel, the sound of my own voice. Never again to fear the freedom in truth. So funny, I'm giggling. I am the conjure, sacrificial blood made flesh. Oh yes, theater is the divine public space, the theatron and orchestra of public discourse, the sacred grove where anything is possible. I am the answered prayer. It is true. Each of us is sufficient and required for this manifestation. Remember, 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 remember love. Indeed. Robbie said, the end of the work is often the beginning. And so it is. Ebo Da. Thank you.
I have one question about spelling, and the other is about the general summary. Number one is, how do you spell Yoruba and Egbe? Yeah. UBA. Okay. I got the second one correct. Okay, and what would you say the general connection between queerness and Yoruba, like in one sentence? The connection. It's big. Yeah. Yoruba? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. And queerness. Yeah.
Argument that I'm making, and it is certainly one that can easily be challenged. I think maybe not easy, but readily. The argument that I'm making, which I think could readily be challenged, and I appreciate your question because I'm going to have to be prepared to answer that, especially in audiences like this where I have a number of Yoruba people who may ask a similar question. My sense is that so much of Yoruba life, my experience of Yoruba life and Yoruba cosmology, is that it is a synthesis of things that are required for right now, rather than future orientation, rather than a set of doctrines that are absolutely fixed. They are very, very fluid. I'll give you an example. In some forms of divination that are associated with Yoruba life, I should make this clear as well. Not all Yoruba people practice Yoruba spiritual forms. I should make that really clear, okay? Because in audiences like this, there may be the assumption that when I say Yoruba, I am speaking monolithically, and I don't want to make the same mistake that I know others have. Okay, so I should say that. Because the divination systems that are associated with traditional Yoruba practices are very fluid. When you go to have divination done, many different things might happen, but a host of possibilities are put before you, and between you and the Babalawo or the Ialawo, the diviners, they determine which of those host of possibilities are most clear for what's happening with you at the moment. You also participate in that. So rather than a right or wrong or a yes or no, it's a much more fluid, integrated sort of practice. And that's my understanding of how queer operates. I was trying to suggest that queer is non-normative generally. We most often associate it with gender and sexuality, but I'm extending the term queer to include unfixed notions of many things. Is that a little clearer? Okay, all right. And trust me, scholars are going to jump all over that. I find it very challenging to balance those things. And I think many people know that I find that very challenging. I understand that the Academy has certain, I'll say, standards. Most of those standards not having been created by anybody who looks like you or me. And in order to be successful in the Academy, one is going to yield to those standards. And I think to some extent I have done that. And I think to some extent it has compromised my work as an artist. And I'm in my elder years, I now look forward to the moments when I can be more free as an artist and feel less constrained through traditional scholarship. So I didn't do what I wanted to do in terms of finding the balance.
Thank you. I want to echo, this was just such a beautiful and moving evening for me. I'm so glad that I wrestled my husband to get here. It was well worth whatever price I have to pay. A lot, also, I have a lot of things that I feel like I'm going to be quoting endlessly to people for the next few weeks. But one thing that really stood out to me is your formulation of queer as being the space where identity continually tussles with itself. That's not the exact quotation, but that this, like, the huge importance of that when thinking about for Yoruba spiritual communities in the United States, in my experience, a resistance to the word queer. And that some of that is from the kind of ongoing colonization of homophobia, right? But I'm thinking of it also, in the way of exposing myself a bit. I was initiating the Yoruba tradition in Chicago. And in the Egbe that I was in there, I was talking one evening to a Yawa Oshun, a young woman, and I was older, and I was like, a postdoc, and I was supposed to know some stuff. And I was talking to her about what I assumed would be a commonality between us. She dated female-bodied people, I dated female-bodied people. I wanted to talk to her about a commonality around queerness that I might not be able to talk to other folks about. And she looked at me in the way that only an Oshun can, right, and told me, here in Chicago, I know the white folks on the north side talk about queer, but we talk about stud and femme, and I'm a femme, so, and I was like, oh, okay. And for me, that was a really powerful reminder of, for me, what is the queerness of Oshun specifically, this reminder not to be stuck in one word or one framework, right? And the need to have that kind of ongoing dialogue that you're talking about, and that's part of the specificity of what I would call Black queer life. So that's not a question so much as a thank you, and that story just popped into my head. So I just would love to hear if there's anything more insight that you could give me on that as well.
One of the things that's exciting for me about our gathering this evening is that we have so many different people gathered here, different backgrounds and different traditions, and it can be a very difficult conversation to have because there are so many differences, but that can also be a very fruitful place. So I'm very mindful that I recognize that among us we have some people like myself, who have been initiated to Yoruba spiritual practices, and then we have Yoruba people who do not practice these traditional spiritual cosmologies, and we have Yoruba people who do practice. So there's a wide range, and then a host of other people too. And part of what's exciting to me about the moment, and it's part of what gives me energy about the book, or renewed energy about the book, is I think that there may be some ways for us to understand Yoruba, and I like the word expansively, so that communities do not have a knee-jerk negative response to a term like queer, particularly communities that got lots of queer folk in them. And so I'm excited to hear your story, because it certainly does overlap with some of my own. It was when I went to Brazil, and you actually saw, well, you've seen pictures of lots of things in front of you, but it was an experience with a Maya in Brazil that I was able to be queer and a practitioner and Black and female and a scholar and an artist and goofy and all of those things that I am. It was there that all of that was just like, yeah. She looked at me like, well, of course. I said, okay, all right. So that it is possible. I had thought for a time that maybe amongst elders it wouldn't be, but she was definitely an elder, and it was a very important moment. And that was actually in one of the photographs that was included. That was not a direct response, but I think that there may be some shift going on in Yoruba diasporic communities, particularly because there's so many. It's a little like the Black church. All these queer people in the church, and everybody's like acting as though the folk are not there. And what would happen, my partner Sharon often says, what would happen if all those people just decided to stand up one day in church and say, I am here and I am me? How would that transform how everybody else in the congregation had to think of themselves and those individuals? So I think that we may be seeing a change, some change. These people are standing up.
Hi, I loved it. It was wonderful.
You let me do all that.
I loved it. It was just great. You had mentioned whenever you were telling the story that you had a period where you were really kind of like brought into yourself, and you like felt like you didn't belong, and you like even in that group, like you were kind of nervous, like you didn't want to be there. You felt like they didn't want you there, even if they invited you. How long did it take you to get out of that mindset? Like, how long did it take you to understand that it was a process for you discovering yourself just as much as all of those people, and that they did want you there, and it was a process for everyone? Like, it wasn't, no one wanted to exclude you. How long did it take you to really convince yourself of that?
I think that's a great question, especially at a university where the majority of the people present are of a certain age. You don't arrive. You're not going to walk through a door and it's all done. It just keeps happening. my daughter is here, and she chuckled when you said the question, because she knows it is a continual. I don't feel that way that I describe. I don't feel that way now, but it is not a complete process of always feeling sure, always, even with that group, with these folk who I'm in constant conversation with, not always feeling like I fit. And part of what I want to say in the book, I don't know that it was said in the sections that I shared with you, is that we're required to not fit. Fitting is not our job. Our job is to not fit. It is really to be outrageously who we are. That's what's needed. And maybe if anything, I'm trying to stand inside of that. Do you know what I mean? Instead of trying to fit.
Let me ask the difficult questions. Right? The difficult questions. Okay. So, culture war, election politics. So first, how does many of these ideas, how do they fit into contemporary American culture wars and the contest for power, especially in the context of ongoing politics? So that's number one. Number two, everything is everything. So that joy thing, I think I want you to explain it to the audience. Because when you made the thesis, I was thinking of basketball and football, in which blacks serve as entertainers. But to shift the theory to say, well, is that joy not central to their own being? So that they're not just making other people laugh. So I just love that argument a lot, and that conclusion, the centrality of joy and your use of framing joy as an act of resistance. Because there are young people here. And one final question, which I'm posing on behalf of young people: how do you combine career with practice to create what you are describing as some kind of organic wholeness? Thank you very much.
I only got two, but I'm going to do the last one first. I wrote down one of them, so I'll do the last one first. Let me put this down. At some point, I came to believe, trust, know, intuit, fall into that what I believe you're calling practice could be my quote-unquote research. In other words, the explorations that I have talked about, the artistic and spiritual explorations and the intellectual explorations, are very much a part of what I teach, are a part of what I write about, are a part of what I do as an artist. So that, I think, to answer your, now that I know it's your third question, not your second question, I think I have figured out a way to make all. In fact, that's a response to Dr. Thompson's question also, that though I felt constrained as an artist, one of the things that I began to do was to make my art the subject of my scholarship. And so that's how those things came together. Did I get the question okay? Okay, all right. And then the other one about the contesting, how does what I spoke about relate to ideas of contesting for power? I think they're very related, because part of what I'm suggesting is that there could be other paradigms for power. I'm suggesting theatrical jazz as a potential paradigm, as Yoruba cosmology as another paradigm, black feminist theories as other paradigms that have not had an opportunity to hold sway in the world. I mean, some of the ones that we're working with in terms of power, I believe, should be seriously reconsidered, because they have not, we've been doing them for centuries and they still are not working. So let's see what else there might be. So I think that in an interesting way, perhaps at the root of what I am looking at as other ways, and maybe I wouldn't even call it power, but of other ways of being, and then that is power, but not power in a hierarchical kind of sense, right? But I am very interested in doing things differently, seeing what happens if we have other strategies. Are there other questions? Everything is everything?
Please, 1 second. So that
So I have lots of comments and questions which I'll share with you later, but can you hear me now? So I guess I was really excited about your move to bring jazz and queerness together, and that there's tension between those two things occupying each other, and that source of tension is productive, it's creative, it's filled with all kinds of things. And you chose to push us into the positive and the joyful aspects, which I liked as well. But I also am thinking that you're thinking through the theatricality of jazz is also a challenge to the canon of what's called jazz. And I was very struck by the fact that the body of jazz criticism is not in what you presented here today. And I'd like to hear you say a little bit more about, this work as kind of a challenge to that, or how do you see it in relationship to that canon, which is often a masculinist canon as well. And secondly, how do you think about the relationship of the music, which has some of the recognizable elements of that canon, in relation to your performance and your writing about the three writers?
Thank you. One of the things that fascinates me about theatrical jazz is that in terms of sexuality and gender, its everyday performance and its aesthetic performance is actually almost the exact opposite of what we associate with musical jazz. In other words, there are many women who are practitioners of theatrical jazz, and they are, had I had time, I would have talked about these kind of four mothers, and it's really four mothers that we talk about. The person that is credited with having created the term a jazz aesthetic in theater is Aisha Rahman. There's Indisak Shange, there's Ellen Stewart, Diane McIntyre. There are a number of people that I would have identified. And so women really occupy a prominent space in theatrical jazz about as much as women composers and musicians have been eclipsed in musical jazz. So that's an interesting inversion. I'm also, I know that I've got all of this like wind going on. The little thing has been lost, so you're hearing more sound than you did before. I'm also interested in working. Ted mentioned that I've been doing these collaborations with Three Jazz Collective. And I should say the music that you're hearing, Three Jazz Collective, Dr. João Costa Vargas, who I was talking to, but you couldn't see me when I was talking to him, and I said I wanted him to give me more feedback. One of the things that is exciting about those collaborations is to see is there something gendered about a note? Is there something sexualized, and sexualized about a particular sound or even a particular instrument? And as I continue to do some work, I've been doing I actually read sections that I shared with you while they were playing jazz, and unlike what I did with this music, this evening where the music was a kind of undercurrent. With them, we try to play and improvise across. I am excited to explore more what that might be. You know, you often have the women in a jazz ensemble, they're on the mic singing, but it's the men who are, some would say, controlling the movement of the music. So I want to play with it more and am excited by the possibility that theatrical jazz offers because women are at the forefront of that form. And we'll talk more. I know that we will.
We know there are other questions, but we have to stop at this time. Please join me once again in thanking her for the lecture. Thank you.